Hello, I'm Tash, and you must be here because you want to learn more about the sequence of a successful renovation. So thank you for taking the time to download this video. It's going to be an overview of the process of a successful renovation. When I surveyed lots of renovators about what they found most tricky about starting their renovation, so many of them said it's not knowing the sequence of where to start and the process of a renovation. So this is why I thought I'd start here in teaching people how to approach renovation. Okay, so let's start with a bit of an introduction. As I said, I'm Tash South and I'm the owner of South Place Studio, where I do renovations for clients, so in a renovation consultancy basis, and then also I do interior design for clients as well. I've worked in the design industries for 20 years in various ways. I started in graphic design. I moved over into interior design after doing a number of my own renovation projects. I then went into renovations. I teach on the faculty at Elle Education, which is Elle Magazine Group's online learning platform. I also contribute to podcasts and articles on interior design and renovations. And I also write extensively on the blog at South Place Studio. I've just launched my own podcast called How to Renovate, where I will be continuing to teach people about how to renovate well, how to save money, and how to do it in the correct sequence. I have been renovating for over 12 years now, starting with my own projects. So my husband and I have been renovating for many, many years. We also built our London self-built house completely from scratch. And alongside my own projects, I've been helping clients to renovate their homes for the past 7 years, or over 7 years now. And so I've completed a number of projects from completely gutting homes to the finished project. And the reason I started teaching about renovations is because I have seen so many renovations go wrong. The renovation process, it's complex, it's complicated, it's stressful, it's expensive. And so really it's become my mission to pour all of my knowledge and experience of having renovated for so many years into everything I do so that I can teach you how to renovate better. So let's move on with the lesson. So as I said, this is an overview of my process, which I've developed over all these years renovating. It's called a 5-pillar process. And it really is how I approach every single renovation that I do, whether it's for myself or it's for a client. It's these 5 pillars that help me to come out at the end with a successful renovation. And each pillar has under it a number of things to consider. And because if you look at the whole process from start to finish, it really can be overwhelming. There's so many things to do, so many people to hire and get involved. And so breaking it down into these 5 pillars just makes it into more manageable chunks, and it also sets you this kind of clear path so you can see step by step as you go through your renovation what's coming next and what you need to do, what do you need to plan up front. And it really does set you up for a much smoother process, and also one where you'll feel less overwhelmed, you'll feel more in control, you're more in a position to save money, to come in on time. So let's go over what we'll cover in the lesson. We are going to go over what it is a successful renovation. Number 2, we are going to go through common regrets and concerns of renovators. Number 3, we'll go through your part to play in the renovation and what you can do to make it better. And number 4, we're going to have an overview of the 5-pillar process that I've just spoken about. Let's go. Okay, so what is a successful renovation? For this one, let's start at the end. So you need to determine what a successful renovation means to you. It is what you see around you and how you feel about your renovation and your home once you've gone through the process and you're living in your end result. Of course, it's, you have to be happy with the result. Is it beautiful? Is it functional? Does it work well for you and your family? A successful renovation can mean so many things to so many different people. And before you start your renovation, it's really important to sit down and determine what it means to you. What would a successful renovation mean to you and your family or those living with you in the home? It could mean just a few things. It could mean many things. So really take the time, really dig down, determine what is important to you, exactly what you want from your renovation. Write it down, because in the long run, what you write down, that end result, is going to help you make decisions, so many decisions that you need to make throughout the complicated and long renovation process. And it will help you always come back to what you really want from your renovation, and that will make your decision making process hopefully a lot easier. Okay, so let me give you a couple of examples. So perhaps a successful renovation means to you that your project comes in as close to budget as possible. In that case, your decisions would be around the scope of the project, the size of the project that you would be able to achieve. You may also make decisions around the cost of the main or the most expensive rooms, like your kitchen selection, your bathroom selection, your materials. So on your big ticket items, you would probably be more conscious of what you're spending or not, and looking for cost saving on those items. But another example could be perhaps a successful renovation to you means that your home reflects your style and your taste perfectly. And so perhaps your main decisions would be around getting the architecture right to exactly how you like it, or combined with the materials that you really love and you don't mind spending so much money on those items, and perhaps you feel other things aren't as important. And so you have to decide what you would like to spend your money on, and you have to decide what's important to you. So I think it's really, really important to start at the end, determine what a successful renovation would mean for you and your family, and then that would set you forward as a starting point into the project. So to give you some more examples, here are some things that I find mean a successful renovation to me. So this would be, depending on the project, if I'm working on with a client or for myself, these are the things that I really try and achieve when I'm working on a renovation project. It would be, it's as close to the budget set out as possible. It would be as close to the time frame as possible that was set out. It would be a home that kind of suits its inhabitants' taste, but above all, it needs to be functional for the people living in it, and it really needs to work for them. And then also always try and choose materials and get as high a quality finish as possible for the budget, so that we're always trying to come out with a quality product at the end. And I always like to end with good relationships with the professionals I've worked with. So whether that be the builders, the architects, the structural engineers, I find that when you can work with good relationships with all these people that are involved in your project, it really does make the process a lot smoother, and also they're more willing to help you. And it's just, you're more set up for a successful renovation and a smoother project if you're concentrating on communication and those relationships with all the people that need to come together and make your renovation project successful. Okay, so moving on to number 2, let's get on to the common renovation regrets and concerns. So over the years, I've really heard it all. I'm quite often called out to projects that have gone a bit wrong, and kind of once things get started to go wrong, people would sometimes call me in, and they want to know how the problem can be fixed, or perhaps what they could have done differently, so they weren't in the position that they find themselves in. Knowing the mistakes of renovators who have gone before you can really be like gold dust, because renovating is complex, it's confusing, it's involved. There are so many people involved, And there's no way you can really mitigate for every single problem that might arise, but because each project is different, each client is different, each team is different, I still come across challenges that need creative solutions in every single project. But it's not all doom and gloom, because you can prepare yourself for the best outcome by just putting in some work and some research before you start. Before you even hire your first professional, you can put in some work, and I'll show you what you can do to really set yourself up for that really smooth renovation process. And you can familiarize yourself with the process and the sequence of a renovation before you start, from start to finish, so that you know what to expect, you know what's coming up, and it will give you the knowledge and the confidence to keep control of your own project, and to kind of save your time, both save yourself the time and the money. And I really want to help you do that. So let's go through some common regrets and concerns here. Number one is lack of knowledge. So lots of renovators, they wish they'd known the proper renovation process before they started. And they just wish they'd kind of done more research and set aside more time to understand the process beforehand, before they started. Another regret I come across is that people, they regret not having kind of looked into the budget more and not set a realistic budget, because it's easy to kind of try and assume that you have enough money, but there are ways you can really dig down, dig deep, get a really realistic figure of what your project might cost you. And I think to put in the time and do that before, so that you're not getting halfway through your project and realizing you're way short and you're in a really sticky situation. So again, it's really best to kind of learn this up front and figure out ways to find out what it's going to cost you, or as close as possible to what it might cost you, before you begin. Another common regret is not knowing the correct sequencing of the professionals. So by this I mean is that people kind of go into a project and they start calling in maybe an architect and a contractor. And like I said before, sometimes if you haven't fully established what you want from the project, architects could spend hours on a project and charge you for that time, and then come out at the other end a couple of weeks later with something that you're not really happy with. So knowing the sequence and knowing when to get the correct professionals involved will again save you both time and money. And then the fourth one is not asking enough questions. I get this one a lot. Because there's so much to know about renovations, people make loads of assumptions when they really should be asking more questions. You should be asking questions right from the get-go. People really regret not asking the right questions, and also or different questions about the sequence, the quote stage, what's included, what's excluded in the quote, what how much work the architect or the builder might have on. There's so many questions that you need to ask to be able to get to the right answers, so that you know that those people are the correct people to select to continue your project with. And then coming on to number 5, which is again not examining the inclusions or the exclusions. This is quite a big one, because people, for example, will get 3 different builders quotes. They might look or be set out completely differently. They may not even be comparing like for like. So by not asking the right questions about inclusions and exclusions in each individual quote, you could find yourself going for a builder who's excluded many items that were meant to be included in the quote. So knowing what to ask and making sure that you're comparing like for like, so you know what to ask on inclusions and exclusions, is so important. And then another regret is to do with communication. I think so many people go through the whole renovation process and only realize at the end, or too late, that if they'd set up kind of clear lines of communication and kind of systems to do that. I like to do a WhatsApp group with everyone involved on the project, on the same WhatsApp group, so we all know what's going on at any one point, and when materials are coming and which stage we're at. So I find this a lot, where people say that they should have set up clearer lines of communication, and they should have tried to understand better exactly what each person was doing and when, because you can often find yourself in a situation where you're then experiencing delays or extra costs because the communications weren't clear enough. So in short, I really believe that having the knowledge and knowing the sequence and the process from start to finish will give you an advantage. It will set you up with confidence to manage your project, and it will, in the long run, will save you time, will save you money, and it will save you overwhelm, and your project will run so much more smoothly. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is number 3, play your part. Now, there's going to be a bit of tough love in this one because you are going to have to do quite a lot of work if you want a successful renovation. It's so easy to think that you're paying all of these people so much money. You're paying architects and contractors and structural engineers, and you might even be paying a project manager. And it's easy to think, with all the emails going about and all the plans going back and forth, that everything is under control and that your renovation will be successful and things are happening in the right order. But unfortunately, this is not always the case. I've seen it so many times where, if you don't have a handle on the project yourself right from the start, things really can start to go wrong. I think even if you want to be as hands-off as possible and you are employing a project manager and you have the budget to do so, I still always recommend that you have a good understanding and overview of the process before you start. Of course, you can learn as you go along, but it definitely leaves the project open to more problems and issues than doing the learning before you begin. And I've found that contractors really love educated clients. I've worked with many builders over the years, and really, just to put it quite simply, it makes their lives easier if you know what you're doing. So, and if they know that you know what you're doing and that you know how to communicate with them, it just makes the whole process run a lot more smoothly. If you look at yourself as part of their team and together you want this renovation to be as successful as possible, and you have a strong idea of what you want, and you have a clear brief and a clear structure laid out before you even employ them, it's going to definitely save you time and definitely save you money and absolutely reduce the overwhelm of the entire project. So let's go through a few things that you can do that will help set you up for success on your renovation project. So number 1 is really examine what you want. Try to be really clear from the start about your goals for your renovation, what you expect, your timelines. Be very clear about your budget. If you are very clear about what you want, that is easy to communicate to everyone else involved. Number 2 is to establish a realistic budget. First of all, get your big picture budget, but then second of all, as I mentioned earlier, it's really dig deep, try and figure out, get down into the nuts and bolts of how much things will cost. You can research online, you can ask contractors. There are so many resources online where you can try and find out as close as possible what your project might cost you. And then the third thing you can do is, like I keep saying, is familiarize yourself with the entire process from start to finish. Because if you know what to expect, you have the knowledge then to approach your renovation with confidence. You have the knowledge of the process, so you know what's happening when. You also then know how to deal with your people properly, your team. So I would really just say, if there's even just one thing that you do want to learn before, it's just make sure that you know the process from start to finish. And then of course the fourth thing you can do is to research your planning and permissions. So this is a great thing to do before you start, because you will get an idea of what the planning laws are in your area. You can go to your local council website, your local authority website. In the UK here, we have something called the planning portal, where there is just a wealth of knowledge. They've got setups for all different situations you can look up. There's illustrations. So there are so many resources out there, and of course I'll continue to teach in my lessons and my podcast as well on how to renovate. So, keep looking up on those, keep listening, and just get as much information and knowledge as you can before you begin. And then number 5 is do some sketch work before you call in your professionals and your architects. It's totally something you can do yourself. You can learn a really simple scale drawing system. I'm actually preparing a lesson on that, so I will have that live quite soon. But you can learn a really simple way to draw to scale. And when you have that knowledge, you can quite quickly draw out rooms. You can draw out to scale. You can draw out rooms. You can draw out kitchens, bathrooms, and you can move things around, and you can play around and see what will work for you, what will work for your family before you've even approached an architect. So that when you go to an architect eventually, you have it quite clear in your mind on what you're expecting and what your ideas are and what will work in your home for you and your family. And of course, they will advise and help and refine, but also you will be saving their hours. You'll be paying them for their hours, not doing all of the developmental work. So that's a really big one, I think, is to just, have a go at sketching out those layouts yourself first. And then another thing you can do is you can start asking for recommendations at this stage. So again, before you start, and I always say at this stage because it takes a long time to find architects and contractors and all the other professionals you need for your project. So it's a good point to start kind of putting the feelers out, letting people know what you're planning to do, and starting to get some contacts in, because the process can take so long. Sometimes you can end up interviewing many architects and contractors and still not really finding the one that you feel is right for you. There's so many elements that need to be considered when you're hiring these people you're going to be working with probably for years at some points, or maybe longer. So start that process early of just kind of putting the feelers out, looking people up. And also sometimes you may get a recommendation and you feel that person might have been right for the person that recommended them to you, but you feel like you don't quite click with them, or you might not get along. So that process can take sometimes months. So I would say definitely that's something you can do at the start of your project as well, to kind of give yourself a head start. Okay, so here we are, the 5-pillar process. So like I said, over the many years I've now been renovating for both myself and for clients, this has helped me so much, just taking this entire confusing and long renovation process of so many different tasks and people, and just splitting them up into these 5 manageable sections, which I've called the 5 pillars. And each pillar has its own umbrella of what you need to do and decide in that stage of the process. So many of my clients, or so many just friends, people have come to me or called me if they've run into issues, have said, I just wish I'd known the process from the start. I didn't know where to start, or where do I even start? And so really that was the inspiration for me to actually get this out of my head and come up with this 5-pillar structure properly on paper, so that I can teach you how to renovate well, break it down, make it easier, save time, save money, and have a less stressful process, and then also just end up with a renovation that you're really happy with at the end. So let's get started. So the 5 pillars are: pillar 1, planning; pillar 2, preparation; pillar 3, people; pillar 4, practical management; pillar 5, perfecting your dream home. Okay, so those are the 5 pillars, but let's dig deeper into what each pillar covers. Let's start with planning. So planning is, for me, it's not what you might think. By this, I don't mean you're putting in your planning applications and you're drawing up your plans and you're getting your architect to put those in for planning permission for you. It's not that. Planning is figuring out in your own mind what you want from the project. It's thinking about, from your ideal home, what is your dream home? Finding out what you really would love from your project. You need to do research in this stage. You can go have a look at other people's homes, see what they've done with their homes. You can read case studies or look up case studies online. You can visit other projects. You can go to open house events. You can, this pillar is about setting out the vision for what you want from your project. It's thinking about the space planning. It's drawing that scale drawing I talked about earlier, figuring out what you want, where perhaps you want things to be. It's even at this stage, the interior design. I'm a strong believer that the interior design needs to start right at the beginning. So it's not something, interior design is not just the paint colors and the cushions at the end. It's about designing into your structure the things that are going to make your life easier, your storage, where even down to where you're going to place your artwork, what materials you're going to use. It's about space planning and discovering your style, how you want your lighting. It's figuring out your big picture budget at this stage, looking at your finances, figuring out what you're willing to spend on the project and what you can achieve for that. So for me, that is what this planning stage is about. And it's also about getting to learn the sequence. So educating yourself on the sequence of the renovation, what's coming next, knowing the next steps and what happens in each step. So it's planning for the whole rest of your project right up until the finish line. So for me, that is what the planning is about. Let's move on to pillar number 2. So pillar number 2 is preparation. So this is the big important stage. This is where everything is happening. This is where you're researching your planning applications and permissions. You're researching whether you need party wall agreements. You're looking at your breakdown of your prospective budget. So in planning, you perhaps have a big picture idea of what your total budget might be. But in your preparation stage, you're breaking that down. You're looking at what every single thing might cost you. You're looking at your fixtures and fittings and what those might cost you. You're preparing a prospective schedule of works, which is basically a list of every single job that needs doing that you can then pass on to your contractor. You can pass on to the architects, all of the people you're going to interview or ask for quotes from. That is a really good structure to give to them, along with all the things you did in the first stage, which is the planning stage. So all of those things together, once you've got them written down, you've got everything together, that is an amazing brief that you can then hand over to the professionals who will then know really that you know what you want, you know your budget, you know what to expect, and they can then go ahead with confidence and work and kind of progress what you've given them. And you can both get to a stage a lot more quickly of where you want to be before you start your project. The preparation stage is also where you start thinking about getting your team together. So, in this stage, you're still perhaps getting some recommendations, you're interviewing for your team. So it's just that preparation stage of starting to think about who you'll interview, the correct people you might need, in the correct sequence you might hire them, so that when you get to the next stage, you're good to go. And in terms of practicalities, this is also the preparation stage, is also the time to start thinking about how you're going to actually approach your renovation when it physically begins on site. So thinking about, will you be living on site? Will you be able to live on site while the works are going on? Would you prefer to move out? Have you got somewhere to move out to? Can you budget for that? So this is all the kind of preparation stage where you want to get answers to all those questions and you want to get all those documents together. You want to get all the information on your planning, whether you need planning or not, whether you need party wall agreements or not. It's kind of just really educating yourself on exactly what you need to move on to the next step of the process. And the next step of the process is pillar 3, people. So this stage is where you start putting your team together. So you may have started interviewing at this stage, figuring out which professionals you need, exactly in which order you would like to hire them in. You want to figure out the timings of when you need to bring in those people onto your project. And then during this stage, you may have your quotes from your different architects, contractors, builders. You may have multiple quotes that you need to compare like for like. So that would take place during this process, so that you can contact those professionals with your questions, with your inclusions, your exclusions, and find out that you are comparing like for like, and so that you are in a position to make a really good decision of who you want to take onto your project. This is also the stage then where you have put your team together, you've hired everybody, and they then start to actually work on your project. They have your brief, they start to work closely with you on what you want to achieve from your project. The architect at this stage would then prepare your final drawings for a planning application. The planning application would go into your local authority. This is also the stage you can get your contract in place. You can, once you've decided on your contractor or your builder, you start getting your contract in place with them. So pillar 3 is really the stage where you bring all your people together, you get your team together, and you get to that stage just before you start to kick off on site. Okay, so let's move on to pillar number 4, which is practical management. So this stage is all about managing the people on site. So managing all your people that you've just hired on pillar 3, you want to make sure that you're managing them correctly. You've got a plan to manage them. You've got a structure to manage them. So this could mean making sure that everybody knows you have regular site meetings, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's deciding on a way to communicate in between. Like I said before, I use a WhatsApp group sometimes. It's really that stage where it's on site. Your project has started. You're managing the people. You're managing any of the items that you are responsible for getting to site. Again, so important to know the process so that you know when to get the items to site. Sometimes items coming to site, they can be too early. They can annoy your contractor. So it's about knowing when to get those things on site, or knowing how to communicate about when to get those things on site, so that the project continues to go smoothly. The stage is also about managing your budget. It's making sure you do regular budget check-ins, make sure you're staying on track. Unforeseen things come up all the time on build projects. You might want to mitigate for those. For example, you might have a surprise where something's come in. The builders have found something that was unexpected that needs repair that would cost some money, and you might want to revisit your budget and find out if there are alterations you can make to accommodate for the new costs. So that all happens during this stage as well. It's about keeping on top and keeping on track with your people, the process of the build, your ordering, your budget, and managing and overcoming any issues that might arise. So the practical management stage really goes up almost until the project's finished. It's, nearly ready to move into, where you've managed the project really from start to finish, so that all that needs to happen is that you then move back in and you move on to pillar 5, which is perfecting your dream home. So perfecting your dream home, this stage is all about making sure that the project is finished off to a good standard. So it's to do with snagging. If you're not quite sure what snagging is, it's basically once the contractor has finished the entire project, you've moved in, you've lived there for a while, there are perhaps little bits and pieces that still need doing. Sometimes as the building moves, little cracks and things might appear, or slight issues might come up. And so the snagging phase is for fixing those little things that were perhaps not quite finished right at the end of the build, but also to repair things that come up once you've been living in the project for a short while. And this will be in your contract. The snagging period should be listed in your contract as to when you're allowed to ask the builder to still come back and fix those things under your contract. So always make sure you've got a date in your contract for that, and the builder should be happy to come back and repair anything that has settled or that has appeared. So that's kind of what this stage is about, is getting everything exactly right, fixing any little issues that may have arisen while you've been living there for a certain amount of time. And then of course it's kind of the perfecting. It's making sure that your home is everything you dreamed of. It's adding those final touches. It's adding the styling elements, the furniture elements, all of those things that really make a house a home. And so this stage I find is really, it's quite important as well, because a lot of people forget this stage. They finish, they move in, and they forget to add those really important elements that make the home theirs, that give it personality, their kind of personal objects or things from their travel. So this is really a stage that you can make the home feel like yours and your family's by adding all these final touches, really perfecting it. And by perfect, I don't mean it has to be perfect for someone else. It has to be perfect for you and how you want it. So that wraps up pillar 5. Okay, so it's time to wrap up this short lesson. And to wrap up, I promise you that if you put in the time to plan, to learn, to research at the start of your project, you will reap so many benefits. You know, your entire project will be less stressful. Your budget and your timeline will be more realistic. The relationships with your professionals and your trades will be better. And then obviously that will lead to a better result. You will make fewer costly mistakes. And most importantly, you will end up with your dream home, the home you really want. And not just a home that looks beautiful, but also a home that really functions for you. Functionality is so important for me in a home. I just think if it doesn't work and it doesn't function for you, then there's no point in doing a renovation at all. So, really, really determine what you want from this project at the start. If we just go back to where we started off, this lesson is just really think about what the big reason is behind why you're doing the renovation and what a successful renovation means to you. And if you learn about the process and you do your research, I do promise you, you will end up with a successful renovation. Well, thanks for watching, and I really hope that was helpful to you. I know that so many people struggle with the sequence of a renovation and they find it overwhelming. They don't know where to start. So I really do hope this was helpful and it gives you some insight into the overview of the process. Do continue to listen to the podcast. There's lots more information there. There's always information on my website at southplaystudio.com. Thank you so much again for joining, and I hope to see you over on the How to Renovate podcast if you need some more information and lots more advice and help and tips over there. Bye for now.